Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Melanie Christopher in this week for Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week, a $1 billion program aims to close the racial and gender gaps in some southern economies, including Mississippi's. We'll talk with Hope Credit Union's Ed Sivak about what all that money might do for tens of thousands of people. Also, Ag Commissioner Andy Gipson touts security upgrades for this year's Mississippi State Fair. And we'll recap John Davis's guilty pleas stemming from the state's biggest public fraud case. It's a case that is far from over as the former Human Services chief prepares to cooperate with federal investigators. That's all ahead this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. As many as 150,000 people in Mississippi and 4 other states could benefit from a $1 billion program created by Hope Credit Union. That Black-owned financial institution aims to close the racial and gender gaps in our regional economy. And Hope is getting a boost from the U.S. Treasury Department to get that money to the people who could use it. Ed Sivak is with us this morning. He is the Chief Policy and Communications Officer for Hope Credit Union and Hope Enterprise Corporation. We thank you so much for joining us on Mississippi Insight, Ed.
Thanks. It's great to be with you, Melanie.
Explain who this money is for, where it's going, and your timeline for getting it to them.
Sure. Well, first, I think it's important that we level set with the challenges that we face. Here in Mississippi, we don't have equal access to financial services. We know that well over half of Black households in the state do not have access to bank accounts or are underbanked. This is in contrast to only about a quarter of white households. If you look at small business loans and lending, there's significantly different rates of turndowns among those two groups. And last but not least, there's inequitable outcomes in mortgage lending as well. And so this program really is going to position us to significantly expand the type of lending that Hope does. Hope exists as the most significant Black and women-owned financial institution in the Deep South. We've been here for 28 years, and we really were formed to mitigate the extent to which race, gender, wealth, place of birth limit one's ability to prosper. This program is really going to forever change the trajectory of our institution and what we do.
That is really something. So when you talk about, say, the small business loans or the other things that involve in interest rates, mortgage and all, are you saying that in some of the underserved communities, indeed, those rates are even higher than they would be for someone else?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at communities where there's high levels of economic distress and communities of color, often you're going to have high-cost predatory lenders that are proliferating in those communities. Mm-hmm. Hope offers affordable, responsible financial products and services, an alternative to those types of loans. This investment by the U.S. Treasury is a game changer. Just last week, we announced a $1 billion commitment to the people of the Deep South. We're going to be able to connect people with small business loans to start businesses, to mortgages. We're going to be able to get people into cars to get to work. Oh. Importantly, this is going to be in communities that are overlooked, underserved by traditional financial institutions. And again, this is made possible by the investment of the U.S. Treasury.
All right. I see that the U.S. Treasury Department is seeding the program, as you said, with $92.6 million. Now, that's its Emergency Capital Investment Program, or ECIP? ECIP?
Sure, ECIP is the acronym.
Okay.
And importantly, again, that is basically regulatory capital. It's a long-term loan that we will go out and we will raise deposits from mission-aligned investors from all over the country. Currently, Hope has investments from corporations like Netflix and Nike and PayPal of several $1 million and at very low interest rates, which we then use to go invest in Black-owned businesses, to get families of color into homes or into automobiles to get to work. This is the capital that's going to see this $1 billion investment over the next 10 years.
That is wonderful. Talk about the sort of barriers that your stakeholders face in, say, starting new businesses or nonprofits.
Sure. Again, one of the biggest barrier is access to capital. Black borrowers seeking capital to start a business are denied loans at twice the rate of white borrowers. Likewise, if you look at home lending in the state of Mississippi, black borrowers earning over $150,000 a year are denied mortgages at significantly higher rates than white borrowers earning between $31,000 and $50,000 a year. Hope has long been working to overcome those barriers, and the proof is in the results. If you look at our lending, 9 out of 10 of our mortgage borrowers are people of color, 87% are first-time home buyers, 2/3 are women. If you look at our small business lending, 7 out of 10 of those borrowers are also people of color. And I think it's important to point out those businesses create jobs. Last year we created 6,500 jobs through those programs.
Wow.
Melanie, the thing I want to really emphasize is even though we've been here 28 years, our impact is small relative to the need of the region. This investment by the U.S. Treasury Department is going to significantly allow us to scale up this investment and reach the people most in need.
So as you said, what you're getting from the Treasury Department just ups the game completely here.
It will allow us to significantly scale up, and we're going to continue to do what we do here in the 5 states. Again, we're headquartered here in Jackson, Mississippi. We will continue to serve people. This is going to allow us to serve people at rates we've never been able to serve before. Importantly, again, it's going to be in the communities and among people who traditional financial institutions have not served. So we're really excited about this opportunity, and again, we look forward to rolling the program out.
Just to go back, how quickly do you believe your first lending opportunities may be finalized?
Oh, we are ready to take people right now. And so if you've got a small business need, if you've got a mortgage need, if you're looking to buy an automobile, if you've run into trouble, or if you're in a high interest rate because you went to someone who's a non-traditional financial provider, we encourage you to come join us. Anyone can join the credit union as long as they support the mission. HopeCU.org is our website, and again, we encourage anyone who has those needs to come now. The program is ready. I want to tell you a story, Melanie. One of the people that we served is a coffee, organic coffee house in Louisiana. It's a black-owned, women-owned business, and all she needed was $10,000. She went to a bank and wasn't able to get that loan. One of the things she said is, I couldn't get the loan because those programs weren't made for people like me. She came to Hope. We made the loan of $10,000. Now she's got a website. She's in 13 stores selling her product in Louisiana. She's talking to some of the biggest retailers in the country. All it took was $10,000. And the fact of the matter is, there are thousands of people like this business owner in the Delta, in the Black Belt of Alabama, right here in Jackson, Mississippi. And we're here to serve them, and because of this program, we'll be able to at levels that we've never been able to before.
So you're acknowledging Mississippi, of course, remains the poorest state in the nation. Do you believe improving the lot of our lowest income communities can materially improve our economy as a whole?
We absolutely need to make sure that everyone has access to the tools to build wealth. Given the tools, anyone can thrive, anyone can succeed in our community. But the reality is there's been laws put in place, there's been barriers put in place, so particularly people of color could not have access to the wealth building tools that other people have had. Again, Hope exists to overcome those barriers. And again, we have long believed and long ascribed to the notion that all it takes is resources, all it takes is tools, and if we get those into the hands of everyday people, of people who've been boxed out of other places, then they will thrive just like everyone else.
Broadly speaking, the American economy still faces a risk of recession. Inflation remains, of course, a very big problem, but the job market remains relatively strong and workers of all sorts are in demand. So what does this economy look like to low-income households, and what has been the impact on them?
Sure. Anytime there's a rise in interest rates, people who are living in the most economic distress are going to be harmed the most, and we just have to acknowledge that fact. It also is something we need to take into consideration when monetary policy is considered. The other thing we need to remember is that for people who are on the outskirts of the banking system, monetary policy doesn't reach as far. An interest rate increase may not reach them, but costs will. And so For people on the edge, we need to make sure that there are programs in place, that there are supports in place, and that financial service access is in place, again, so that people can invest in themselves and in their families to move up the economic ladder.
Let's talk about the legislature. The 2023 legislature just around the corner. What do lawmakers need to do now to give more Mississippians the chance to lift themselves out of poverty?
I think it's important that we start by looking at the children in this state. You know, 9 out of 10 children in Mississippi are either black or white. In no other state are these numbers that high. They're also nearly even among the two groups of children. However, the poverty rates between those two groups of children are markedly different. Well over 40% for black children compared to 14% for white children. Until we recognize that solutions that invest in all people, particularly our black children, are in the best interest of our state's economy, the reality is our economic potential as a state is capped, it's limited. So we really need to go into the session looking for ways that we can invest in all communities, particularly communities of color, in all people, particularly people who've been left out, who are structurally disadvantaged. When we finally get ascribed to those programs and those approaches, then I really believe we'll reach the potential that we can here in Mississippi.
All right. Ed, once again, just remind folks how they can learn more about the HOPE's ECIP program.
Sure. Again, we encourage anyone to come to our website at www.hopesu.org. Again, anyone can join the credit union as long as they support the mission. We encourage you to join if you do support the mission and if you have a need. So again, join us, learn more, and come see us.
All right. Ed Sivak, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Melanie.
We'll be right back. The Mississippi State Fair is less than 2 weeks away, and local and state authorities say they'll boost security for this year's event in Jackson. Agriculture and Commerce Commissioner Andy Gipson oversees the state fairgrounds. And last week he held a news conference with Jackson police, Hinds County deputies, and other law enforcement officers. Gipson says fairgoers will see a security team and precautions like never before. We put together these excerpts from his briefing.
We are not going to be controlled by a few criminals. We're not going to let a few bad actors ruin the Mississippi State Fair. When people come to the Mississippi State Fair in 2022, it will be the safest place in the state of Mississippi. We say that every year, but I believe it's especially true today. And I'm going to be here every day myself at the State Fair, each and every day. I'll be giving some biscuits out starting October the 6th, each and every day. And my family's going to be here. And I promise you, we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe it was a safe place. And we will be here. We ask you to join us for the State Fair. We've got all these different agencies that I've mentioned partnering together, pulling the same direction. Now we're going to talk about our security staff and the new security measures that are being put in place for 2022. These are measures that we didn't just pull out of thin air. These are measures that our Chief of Security, Jimmy Herzog, has consulted with other fairs and other states around the country. What you're going to hear today are issues and measures that have been taken by multiple state fairs across America. And we think that they fit the need here at the Mississippi State Fair. Security at the State Fair will be throughout the fairgrounds, officers and security officers throughout the fairgrounds. And this year, there will only be 7 entry points to the Midway, only 7. 7 entry points, funnel points, if you will. So everyone who comes to the Midway will go through those points with officers there on hand, and there will be magnetometers in place to check for any deadly weapons that are carried by unlawful persons. We're going to have those in place, and on top of that, we have video surveillance running around the clock here at the State Fairgrounds, and we really appreciate everybody working behind the scenes. Based on our law enforcement assessment, and I would mention Homeland Security helped us conduct this assessment through the Department of Public Safety. I really appreciate Commissioner Sean Tyndall, Colonel Ginn, Baxter Kruger, all of you and your team, and Capitol Police, State Capitol Police, Bo Lucky. Thank you all for helping, and all of us have really appreciated the insights you brought from the other parts of the country. One of the things we've noticed at the State Fair in recent years is late at night, when the fair is open, we do have from time to time large numbers of unsupervised youth who come in late at night without adult supervision. And other fairs have had the same type of issue. So this year, for the first time, people need to know that after 9 o'clock p.m., youth will be required to have adult supervision when they come through the gates. In other words, after 9 o'clock, every guest may be asked to show official ID that they are of age, that they're 21 years of age. And if they're not, then they need to have a responsible adult with them, 21 years of age or older. We're going to be enforcing that at each of the 7 entry points. Those entry points will maintain a metal detector, so anyone who is carrying an unlawful weapon, any unlawful individual, underage people who are carrying weapons like we've seen in the past, they will be detected and they will be dealt with immediately. All bags will be subject to check. We have a maximum bag size that we're putting in place. And of course, as always, no outside food or beverage, no marketing, no soliciting, no political vending items allowed unless authorized under fairground regulations. No animals other than service animals or as authorized by fair management for fair activities. No banners, fireworks, explosives, or laser pointers allowed. I would mention this. We do have, as I already talked about, the mounted patrol units. Hines SO, Mississippi Highway Patrol will be on the fairgrounds, and the State Fire Marshal's Office is providing a group of trained canine units, dogs, that were very highly qualified and trained to detect any suspicious activity. They'll be on site as well. Pursuant to state law, the legal carry of firearms for all lawful adults is recognized. We're not changing the law on that. We have that in the state law. And we have, of course, to apply common sense, exceptions that can be granted based on fair security and fair management. Bottom line on these new procedures for unsupervised youth late at night, the fairgrounds is not here to babysit youth late at night who may get into bad activities. We are going to put these procedures in place. We invite anyone and everyone to come to the state fair, but if you're underage, you need to come to the fair earlier and not after 10, 11, late at night, as we've seen these patterns in the past.
That's Ag Commissioner Andy Gipson with the security rundown for the 2022 Mississippi State Fair. Mississippi Insight continues in a moment. Former State Welfare Director John Davis is set to cooperate with investigators looking into the state's welfare fraud scandal. Davis pled guilty last week to a total of 20 state and federal charges. 12 News' Richard Lake reports all the charges Davis pled guilty to were in connection to TANF funds funneled into the companies of a retired professional wrestler.
Pleading guilty to 2 federal counts of conspiracy, fraud, and theft, Davis is facing a maximum of 15 years. His sentencing date is set for February 2nd, 2023. In state court, Davis pled guilty to all 18 counts of fraud or conspiracy. Judge Adrian Wooten sentenced Davis to 32 years in the Mississippi Department of Corrections and ordered him to pay over $200,000 in restitution.
I'll leave you with the fact that you knowingly committed these acts, and that in committing these acts to help someone who didn't need any help, and to take away that was needed by those who did need help, you have 32 years to think about that.
It's been justice delayed, but not justice denied.
Davis has also agreed to cooperate with law enforcement as the case continues.
So we're still looking through records and text messages as we continue to move up. And we also continue to work with the federal authorities from Washington and in Mississippi to continue to move forward. John Davis is critical because the letter continues to move up.
As the case moves forward, State Auditor Shad White made it clear no stone will be left unturned.
We're going to continue to make sure that this case is thoroughly investigated. As everyone knows, we have turned over every piece of evidence that we have over to federal investigators. This case is going to be thoroughly investigated top to bottom.
That's Richard Lake reporting. 12 News will keep a close eye on the TANF fraud investigation, and we'll keep you posted on all key developments. We're back in a moment. Big thanks to Ed Sivak with Hope Credit Union for joining us this week. Before we go, a programming note. Next week, 12 News presents a special edition of Mississippi Inside, and we're focused on Mississippi's economy, where we've been, where we're going, and how we might get there. What can public and private sector leadership do now to lift our people from poverty and foster greater business development for all of our citizens? Byron Brown will interview Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, MDOT Central Commissioner Willie Simmons, and Scott Waller, President and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. That's a special edition of Mississippi Insight, broadcasting at 6:30 Thursday evening, September 29th. We will air it again in this time slot, 10:30 Sunday morning, October 2nd, and we hope you'll join us. I'm Melanie Christopher. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.